Welcome into the party on Broad here on the Edge of Philly Sports Network. I'm Freddie Burns. I got Chris Dive, Tiago here. The Sixers coming off a 115-103 destruction of the Boston Celtics in the Garden. Biggest win margin since 1982. Stunning, shocking. I'll go with you, Tiago. Excitement level right now. How are we feeling?
Excitement level is at an all-time high, man. This is Philadelphia's chance to bury Boston and put away a lot of demons in the Embiid era and eras of the past. So the excitement level are at the absolute peak, and I think the Sixers turned a corner last night. I think they play with a level of purpose that we have yet to see from a Doc Rivers-led team, and I think that bodes well for a Game 6. That's going to require everything, man. Boston is not going to, lie down and give this game up. So I'm going to be very, very excited to see how the Sixers react tomorrow night.
Tiago was telling us before the show he had concert tickets. He even sold them because he's watching the game tomorrow night. Dedicated fan and analyst right there. Dives, you kind of said that the Sixers were going to win this. I don't want to talk about the second part of your prediction yet. But how excited are you?
Man, just walking on clouds all day at work this morning, the afternoon. I'm enjoying it. I'm truly enjoying it. Like Tiago said, Game 6 is going to be a fight. But also, like Tiago said, for the first time this series, we saw the Sixers a step ahead of Boston in many respects. And we're going to break them all down one by one on this one. But you got to start with the Sixers starters. The starters have kind of been a net negative on the court against Boston in this series. That changed in Game 5. Every single starter on the Sixers was at least a plus 10. And then we got to talk about Doc Rivers, which we'll break down a little bit more in detail. I'm not a big Doc guy, but his rotations, his mid-game adjustments with Danuel House, all that stuff, man. The big-time kudos to Doc Rivers, and we'll, again, deep dive into more of what we saw. But how can you not be ecstatic? I'm trying to keep myself level-headed today, because I know Thursday is going to be a fight, a heavyweight fight, one game at a time. But, wow, what a win.
We will get to Doc, as you said. We'll get to P.J. Tucker, Harden, Maxey, pick and roll, of course, Joel Embiid. But before we get to all that, we got to get to our amazing sponsors and lineups. And we have an amazing lineup here at Edge of Philly Sports. Monday, you have Chalk Talk at 8:45. Tuesdays, Talking Sports with Matty B. Sixers post-game. If you were watching last night, Tiago and Dives were on, did an amazing job. Fighting's Final, which is our Phillies post-game show. Party on Broad, as you're listening to now. Right after this, stay tuned. You'll have Philly Press Box Radio, along with the Edge of Philly Sports Show at 8:30 p.m. Thursdays, we have the Attacking Third with the Union. Also, another post-game show for the Sixers. Plenty of other stuff. Saturday mornings, the Patterson Ave Fanatics. We also got stuff on Sunday, every day of the week here, PM in the AM on Sunday as well, and all across all the time. And now to our amazing sponsors. And first, it's Dolan's Bars in Delaware County has an amazing event going on this Saturday. It's called Philadelphia Sports Day, Wiffle Ball Mania, and Eagles Autism Fundraiser. Charlie Manuel is going to be there. Mickey Morandini, Philly Sports Guy, and Hollis Thomas, 1 to 8 p.m. Stop on over to Dolan's. It's a great event. I've actually done the play-by-play. I got to do the Mickey Morandini. Like, he actually plays in the wiffle ball, talks crap to you. It's pretty cool. Great time. Check it out. Our next sponsor is Philly Sports Trips, and another amazing sponsor we have. Now, tomorrow night, they do Phillies, Sixers, they do Union, they do everything. But tomorrow night, the NFL schedule is going to drop. And as you can see here, all their trips are lined up, the date to be determined. Go to phillysportstrips.com, book a trip today. Now, if you're not going to go on the trip, or you're going on the trip on your own, you just need the tickets. We got the answer for that too. And we just updated it to Sixers colors because there's a big game tomorrow night. But go to sherrystickets.com. It's easy to use, no hidden fees. The price you see is the price you pay. Pay less and pay more with Sherry's Tickets. Save even more by using the exclusive promo code EOP10. They do more than just games. They do concerts. theater, all that. Come out, www.sherrystickets.com. And finally, if you got any legal issues, any law issues, David R. Cherry Esquire, call him now, 610-565-0300, workers' compensation, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, or criminal law. Now, first guy I want to get to, we'll talk about all the fun stuff, the stats, but I want to get into the grimy physicality. The reason this guy got crushed all year, a playoff PJ Tucker has proven to be an emotional leader on this team to push us through as Thiago help us turn that corner to face that physicality. He was 1 for 4 last night. 3 points, 7 rebounds. 6 of those were on defense, which I think is very important to note with the second chances that the Celtics have been getting in this series. 1 assist, 4 fouls, and he was a plus 11. Thiago, I'll go with you first. What impact? Talk about the PJ Tucker effect.
I think you touched on it. To me, it's the physicality. I mean, Jaylen Brown has had a field day for most of this series, and I thought that last night in particular, PJ Tucker said enough. There was a few possessions where PJ Tucker got up in his body and even took a foul as a result of that. But I think he did it very consciously because he wanted to send a message pretty early in the game that it's going to be differently today. And I thought that physicality really played out for the rest of the game itself. I thought that Boston didn't look up for the fight. And I think guys like PJ Tucker in particular put the Sixers in a position to be like, hey, we're going to come in here. We're not going to back down. We're not going to lose Jaylen Brown on defense. And he was a huge part of that. PJ Tucker, man, I have my very strong opinions about his offensive game. But overall, when you watch him play, when PJ Tucker's setting a screen, for instance, there's no defender coming through that. When Paul Reed, Joel sets a screen, guys tend to kind of get around it. When PJ Tucker anchors down, it's game over. And these are the type of plays that I think make a huge difference, man. I'll go back to, if you guys remember that game against Toronto where they lost in Game 7, there was a possession at the end of the game where the Sixers couldn't get a shot off. They were trying to set up a JJ Redick stagger screen with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And after the game, people were like, how can the Sixers not get a shot off with the game on the line, Game 7? If you go back and look at that play, it's Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid just whiffing on a screen with the game on the line. And like with PJ Tucker, there's none of that. It's, I'm going to lay this guy out and you're going to get a wide open shot. So like you said, it's the physicality, it's the presence. And I think those are the things that the Sixers didn't have in previous teams that are clearly playing out over the course of this series. And I don't think Boston has that guy either. I don't know, Chris, maybe you have a different opinion on that. They don't look like they can punch back in that same type of fashion.
Yeah, the only one close, and he's a little pipsqueak is Marcus Smart. He's the only one that and he's not really. And the only one that you could even put in that kind of that annoying, he's going to bounce you around type of thing, but nowhere near on the PJ Tucker level. Dives, we talked about the physicality. Can you talk about he got in Embiid's face in Game 4? Which was I haven't seen it happen. I saw Danny Green a couple times, like in regular season games, be like, "Hey, keep your head up," but he screamed at him, and I think it made a big difference. Can you talk about that aspect of PJ Tucker?
Well, I think the Sixers in general have had an accountability issue for a long time. This is a franchise starting at the top that refused to look at themselves in the mirror. And I'm talking about Doc, and I'm talking about Joel Embiid and different things like that. And they haven't had a guy like Brian Dawkins or Jeremiah Trotter on the court in the locker room that's going to speak up. And PJ Tucker is that guy. And it hasn't been perfect for him defensively. And, Thiago nailed it. Like the physicality he's brought, especially in Game 5, was a huge part of this one, man. Most notably, like it doesn't matter which Celtics player is in front of him, he will always make that guy want to do something else with the decision, with the basketball in his hands. Like he will kind of force them to jab step or pump fake or try to create room. They don't have any other guys that can really do that besides like Paul Reed at the forward position. I thought his execution on defense was awesome in Game 5. And you look at the Sixers defense overall, I thought the switches were really good. I thought they shifted assignments quickly, consistently. I thought they stayed in front of shooters, contested shots better from three. And a big part of that is leadership. A big part of that is PJ Tucker, man. Boston missed a lot of shots throughout this series, open shots. But game 5 was a major step in the right direction, all from the energy and the leadership of PJ Tucker through 5 games when defending Jaylen Brown. When PJ Tucker is defending Jaylen Brown, Jaylen has 36 points on 109 plus possessions. He is shooting 15 of 20 from the field and has 4 turnovers. So the point is, Brown is still getting what he's getting, but it hasn't been an extraordinary amount. Like, he's been able to limit the damage, and that's all you can really ask for. PJ Tucker has been a pleasant surprise.
And he makes the damage done tough. It's not easy shots. You may get yours, but you make it tough on him so that through the course of the game, and we've seen that with Jaylen Brown. He's got hot in the beginning, and then towards the end, he starts to fade off. Now, is that the Celtics offense? He complained about not getting the ball kind of after game 4. I don't know. We've seen that before from Embiid, where he kind of just gets worn down. And I think, to your point, Dives, Tucker's done that to Brown. Moving on to the offensively, so defense, the physicality there. Let's talk about, well, first, James Harden was kind of the conductor last night. 17 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, 8 rebounds, 2 shy of the triple-double. And then you had Tyrese Maxey, great game, 30 points. I was reading Kevin O'Connor tweet. Yeah. They had 53 pick and rolls combined, which averaged 1.15 points per play. We didn't. The pick and roll kind of faded away in the previous series because of the way the net switched. It didn't seem like we could get that going. It wasn't working successfully up until last night. The pick and pot was there, even the pick and drive. Let's talk about the pick and roll with both Maxey and Harden. Tiago.
I mean, it's the staple of the Sixers offense. So without that play, the Sixers are going nowhere. And it was great that they could find that again against Boston. The key point about James Harden that I think people need to look at in more detail is the way that he conducts the Sixers offense. I mean, there is a level of understanding of where to get guys looks on the court. Obviously, Joel Embiid being the number one factor in that. And when you contrast that against Boston, they don't really have a true point guard on the court. So when you're watching Boston's offense, it's very chaotic. They want to run, but they fall in this isolation kind of mode offensively. With the Sixers, with James Harden controlling the pace, he has an unbelievable capacity to really slow the game down towards Philadelphia's favor. And I think that really plays into how the Sixers want to attack this series. They don't want to get on an up and down game with Boston. That's a game they will lose very easily because Boston is a lethal transition team. So I think that's the key point. And to be honest, I think Boston has made that pick and roll incredibly easy for the Sixers. I don't understand what their approach is, to be honest, especially last night. They gave up that Joel Embiid extended free throw shot multiple times in third quarter. They're trying to play between a switch system, a drop system. I think the fact that Harden has attacked the rim aggressively this series has opened up that drop coverage because now Horford or Robert Williams are thinking, hey, this guy may actually attack the rim. So they sag, and that opens up the Joel kick on the pop itself. So I think Harden's aggressiveness early in the series has been huge to open up that game, whereas against Brooklyn, he was a little bit more passive and wasn't as efficient. And like I said, I think that, overall, the way that the Sixers are set up with Harden on the ball gives them a huge advantage over Boston because, quite frankly, the Celtics don't have a point guard, and that's been their downside this series, in my opinion. So.
And Harden dropping 40 plus in 2 games kind of opened that up too, as well as the drive, because now they're scared. They don't know what to do. Now it's like, we can't commit to Embiid because he's going to knock that down. Dives, I made a prediction for game 5, Maxey. I got one right. I like when you tweet them out. Ain't it great when you tweet them out and they're right? Love them. Love when that happens. He went off. Talk about Tyrese Maxey, because I think it's so good for him to get going, especially against this Celtics team. And if we do move on, it's going to be important for him to have that confidence against a tough Miami Heat team as well.
He was dominant. Talk about like the guy that had to step up in Game 5. I just, like I said at the start of the show, the Sixers were a step ahead of the Celtics. The Celtics looked sluggish for the first time in this series, and I think Maxey was a big part of that. I thought every time the Celtics tried to go under a screen, he made them pay. That three-pointer he made in the fourth quarter was huge. I think Boston, there was a lot more miscommunication on offense and defense from the Celtics in Game 5, but Tyrese Maxey made them pay every single time, especially getting to the rim efficiently. This is a guy who we all know is a masterclass at finishing around the rim. You look at games, 2 through 4, really struggled, really struggled. And he was excellent. And that's the guy that the Sixers really needed to step up and make buckets. And that's what Maxey is. Like, I think in this series, big picture wise, he's not ready. He's not on the timeline of Joel Embiid and James Harden. B, he's not a point guard. That's not what he is. And sometimes I think that the Sixers ask way too much of him. But this was a great performance in Game 5, flashed in those pick and rolls. And that's what we need him to do. And score the basketball. There's a lot of things that Tyrese Maxey still needs to work on: changing speeds, creating for others, finding the open shooter. But we'll take what we can get at this point. Maxey, the swag that I saw, the confidence I saw when he shushed the crowd after that huge three, that's huge. And this is a guy who's been really struggling. And if that is any indication of what we're going to see or expect in Game 6, Boston should be shitting their pants, because if that guy gets unlocked, they're in big trouble, because we know that guy can put up points in a hurry.
When Maxey is on, this offense is unstoppable because he just changes it all. Go ahead, Tiago.
I think I also have one more thing to add after that.
I mean, I don't know if you guys noticed the change that Doc made in the fourth quarter is that he gave Maxey the ball late in the game. It wasn't James Harden running the offense. I think even Doc said after the game that he wanted to add more speed. He thought that the Sixers looked very slow closing out Game 4, and that was a fantastic decision, to be honest. I mean, Maxey looked fresh. He looked too fast for Boston's offense late, and he created some open looks. He even attacked himself. So it was very impressive to see him close out a game at the Garden on the road. I mean, he was the guy getting the buckets late. So hopefully that plays into more late game Maxey. But yeah, kudos to him.
I think it's very clear that this Sixers offense is at its best when they're pushing the tempo, they're moving the basketball, they're implementing the pick and roll. That's obvious. When it really, really struggles, or it just kind of goes nowhere, is when they just throw it to Embiid, clear out, and ball watch. So, yeah, if we can get the ball more to Maxey in Game 6, the sky's the limit.
Couldn't agree more. Both of you guys, and me myself too, I've been kind of on the fence, but you guys more, and rightfully so, have been very critical of Doc. And I swear, Tiago, I thought I was hearing stuff, because I heard in the beginning of the show a slight compliment come out of your mouth, and I just heard another one. So I don't know if I'm hearing stuff or whatever. But Doc had a great game last night. I have a couple points down here, and I'm going to go through each one, and you can add at the end if I miss something, but there's 4 main things he did last night, and I just want to give a grade. Everyone give a grade on what you think and the impact that had. So I want to start in the first quarter with Doc, and we were up about 7-8, and then all of a sudden he threw the zone out of nowhere, which, I mean, the Sixers get crushed for not knowing how to read a zone, and Doc does, but the Celtics did not know how to read the zone. They were stunned by it. I thought it was a huge move in the first quarter to push that lead a little more. I'll start with you, Dives. Do you think that was a good move, and give that a grade, I guess? A through F.
A. How do you not grade that an A? It was their most efficient defensive performance in this series. The moment, talk about the moment. This kind of series has been a roller coaster, up and down. But overall, the Sixers can do all they can, but the lineups we saw with House, the lineups we saw with Melton, who has been a revelation, PJ Tucker again making big moments, B-Ball Paul having huge moments in this series, and then of course Joel Embiid's rim protection, which has been a master class in this series, and I can't wait to talk about that. But it's an A for me, man. They're doing the best they can given their their struggles with matching up with Boston's wings and their athleticism. They did everything they could. Yeah, Boston had a lot of wide open misses, but that's what Boston is. They're a shoot or die kind of basketball squad, and it is what it is.
What did you think about that zone move, Tiago? You give it an A, C, average. What do you think?
I mean, anytime you're severely undermanned as a perimeter defense like the Sixers are, anytime you can switch up to the zone, I'll always be pro that. I'll give it a A minus, B plus. The reason why I will not give it a solid A is because, like Chris said, Joel Embiid has been serious defining, serious altering defensive player. I mean, he has completely shifted the way that Boston has attacked the perimeter, both at the rim and on the paint. I mean, you can watch, you can visibly see Jason Tatum come out the screen, stare Joel Embiid in the eye and be like, nope, not going there.
End of game 4. The end of game 4. That pass was smart. That was all Embiid.
Yeah, I watched the game from last night, rewatched it. He did at least 6 or 7 times last night. And I think that when you go to a zone, you limiting Embiid's impact a little bit. So I think it's a good change up, preserves his legs a little bit, but Boston's a good shooting team. Embiid is one of the best, if not the best defensive player in the NBA. So I would like to see him kind of still go into Joel mode late in the game.
So Doc comes out the day of the game or day before and says he's shortening the bench and like they're only playing starters. And then I thought it was a little bit of gamesmanship, then proceeds to manage the starters' rest, I think, perfectly last night. And at points, and it has to do with the lead and if the Celtics were making a run. But right there, it was early, late third, but most importantly, he got a 4-minute break early there in the second quarter where it was just Harden and he sat them and maintained the lead. And then when it felt like there was a momentum from the Celtics, called timeout, got the starters back in there. What did you think of Doc's management of the bench, essentially? And we'll get to the main move he made. I want to talk about that at the end, but just the rest factor. Dibes.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because I was having some drinks at the time as well, I remember the lineup going really well, and it worked exponentially until it didn't. So I will say one thing about it. I'll say I give kudos, credit for putting in and sticking in with the guy, especially we're about to talk about, especially in the fourth quarter where he played major minutes. But I will say there was an extension of time where, okay, it wasn't working anymore, and Boston kind of figured it out a little bit and went on their little run, and then the Sixers called a timeout. So I can't be more like the bench hasn't been terrible, and this has been the Achilles heel of the Sixers in the playoffs for years, and they managed it. I think they were a +2 with Embiid on the bench in that stretch. So I can't believe I remember that. So overall, it was very good.
Yeah, and I think having a good backup center that's adequate, that can actually sustain himself, like Paul Reed, is a big factor in the bench being like that. Tiago, did you like the rotations, and most importantly, how long he left it seemed like he was managing the score and time and leaving the starters out, getting them significant rest.
I think that's the thing. It's the Paul Reed factor. Doc Rivers fully trusting Paul Reed this season, from around January on, has probably saved the Sixers season. And I don't mean that very lightly. The reason why I say that is because Joel Embiid was out game 1. Paul Reed came in and played a very, very good game. He was ready. He was ready to play, and the Sixers were able to pull out a huge win on the road. Sixers dropped that game, with, Dwayne Dedmon or Montrezl Harrell. You're talking 0-2. You're probably talking about a series similar to what it was with Miami last year, where you're fighting from behind. You're not really you don't really have a hold of the series. So that's really what has saved the Sixers season this year. I mean, to be honest with you. And I think that speaks to his growth as a coach. And last night was another example, right? I mean, you're on the road. You got to do whatever it takes to win. And he goes on that run with Paul Reed, and they pretty much play Boston even. So as long as you can give Joel as much rest as possible, I'm all for that. And a lot of it falls on his trust for Paul Reed. That has not wavered. He has not wavered on Reed throughout 2023. And I think that has been massive for the Sixers because Paul Reed has delivered on both ends of the court, continues to do that. And if he continues to do that moving forward, man, there's no reason why you can't go to those 3-4 minute runs to give Joel a much needed rest. I mean, so I'll give him an A. I mean, I actually think Paul Reed can play more, but I don't think it's going to happen. So.
Shout out to D'Anthony Melton too. Has had a terrific series, top to bottom. I mean, if there's a winner, like you make a top 3 winners of the Boston Philly series, like Melton's right there.
Yeah, Harris got in foul trouble last night, and he stepped in and just filled because Harris was having a good defensive game. He was obviously getting physical. That's why he was in foul trouble. And Melton stepped right in, and they didn't miss a beat there. I agree there on Melton. Now on the move of the night. Danuel House, 10 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist. Good defense, a layup machine. Thiago, I will go to you first. I thought he was going to dunk that alley-oop. I thought it was going to be a dunk, but he actually made it too. Bank right in. Talk about Danuel House last night.
Shades of Allen Iverson in the All-Star game when he got that alley-oop like behind the backboard and was able to lay it up. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That first layup, I was like, oh no, here it comes. And then he makes it. The second layup, I was like, there's no way he's going to make this. He makes it. The third layup, I was like, you know what, House, just go ahead, man. You just do your thing at this point because you're on one. Defensively, I mean, that's where you have to start, man. I mean, his ability to circle screens, athleticism, size, the perimeter is, I think, everything that the Sixers expected out of McDaniels and got very little of. And I thought last night that was the difference, especially around Jaylen Brown. There was a couple possessions where Brown came out across the screen and was trying to get the shot up, and you could see House right there. So you either have to pass it, hesitate it, and if you go back to Game 3, Jaylen Brown was coming on the screens wide open, man. There was nobody within 2 feet of him. So that small change is able to steal a couple defensive possessions, and those things can go a long way, man, to winning a basketball game and keeping Boston from going on a run. I think he's a piece that they should consider not only for Boston for Game 6, but if they face a team like Miami, you think about like Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, and perhaps even Tyler Hero. Those guys are prototypical, pin down, come across, screen, fire. And if you have a guy like House who can defend that, that's massive. So I think it's going to be a big, valuable piece moving forward. The question is, will he hit enough shots offensively to be somewhat playable? I guess that remains to be seen. But last night he did everything. So,
and if you get a chance, you see Tiago's Twitter there at Tiago PHL. He shares a tweet today. He is all good content, but today of actually showing that screen, and he shows a comparison, and it's pretty good info. So go check him out now. Hit a follow and check that out. It's very educational to see what he's talking about. Dives house party.
By the way, Tiago's the best Sixers Twitter follow, right up there with Sean Bernard, man.
When we win, Chris. When we lose, then I'm pretty grumpy, and then I'm yelling at everybody.
Yeah, Tiago's such a good Twitter follow. So is Sean. I mean, I learned everything I know about the Sixers from those two. But anyway, Danuel House, just magnificent on both ends. Like I said, the Sixers are at their best when they're pushing tempo, when they're moving the ball fast, when they're getting up and down the court. Danuel House was a big part of that. He really, I thought, pushed the pace in transition. His defense was spectacular. You mentioned Jaylen Brown. I'm going to throw one out there and talk about Malcolm Brogdon because he's been an unsung hero for Boston. Brogdon was a net positive in every single game against the Sixers in this series. He's hit 53% of his three-pointers. He's averaged nearly 20 points per game through games 1 through 4. Danuel House held Malcolm Brogdon to 0 points on 0 of 1 shooting. Completely phased him out of the game. And that was his primary role on defense, Malcolm Brogdon. So I thought House did an excellent job just taking care of all of Boston's like downhill attempts. It was really impressive. Boston loves that driving kick offense and finding those advantages and mismatches and things like that. Danuel House, like PJ Tucker, didn't allow any of that. He really shut it down. And again, kudos to Doc Rivers for noticing it, because Danuel House was in this game with like 7-8 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter when there were big moments with Boston trying to get back in this game, just like previous games where like the Sixers tried to like inch their way back into it. Boston had an answer. It was the vice versa in Game 5 where the Sixers had an answer, and his energy, his defensive prowess, and his athleticism and length, I thought, from Danuel House was a big part of the Sixers being able to keep Boston at bay, and that pressure was everything.
My only issue and my only fear is that Doc just thinks this is the move now, and he just sticks with this.
I hope.
Well, House can get goofy too, and
Yep.
jacking up ridiculous threes and being nonsense and so I don't think you just staple this Niang House thing right now. I think you play it out, see how it goes, but I think Boston's going to adjust as well, because they didn't expect House. They didn't expect that to happen. None of us did.
It throws back to what was Jalen McDaniels doing for this roster. Like, that's what I think about. Like, I think George Niang, for all his faults, has hung in there defensively, but he is a floor spacer. When he's on that court, Boston has to respect that shot. Jalen McDaniels given absolutely nothing. And at least what you get with, Danuel House is, he's going to give you high effort. He's going to push the tempo and put pressure on Boston, and they're backpedaling. I'm really good if they continue this trend.
Yeah. One of the things that I've really got on Doc for is when I watched the Sixers' previous iteration in particular is the fact that they don't look like they do a lot of scouting. They just run out there with their defense, with their own system, with their own rotations, and just kind of throw it up in the air and like, this is who we are. We'll win this way. We'll lose this way. And I think when you talk about House, I mean, you watch Game 3, even Game 4. Game 4, Boston lost, but there was some wide open shots that Boston was taking. And that's what I told Chris after the postgame. I'm like, Chris, if that's going to be Game 5, the Sixers have no chance. I mean, they're going to make some of these shots. I thought that the Sixers went back to Game 4, studied the tape, and realized, hey, man, we just need more athleticism on the perimeter. We got to shut off some of these open shots. And I think that's where House comes in. And I think it speaks to the scouting that the Sixers are doing. They're looking at this series, and they're like, hey, we have to adjust. We can't come out Game 5 and give up 40 wide open three-point shots in Boston. They're going to win this game. So that's where I give Doc credit, because you can clearly tell that, like, hey, they've actually went back and looked at the tape and made the adjustments. So kudos to Doc for sure.
You heard it, folks. Adjustments and Doc
Yeah.
Rivers. Adjustments and Doc Rivers. This is stunning. But I got a trivia for you here. All right. So of all the Sixers bench players and starters combined, one player was a -11 plus minus. What player do you think that was last night? Don't be cheating. I see you moving the mouse there.
I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it.
Hands up. Hands up.
-11 off the bench. Was this Shake Milton?
He did. I actually like that move too, because we had no ball handlers. They had dude. Were you guys scared there at the end? They started draining those threes, dude. That was getting to within 9. I'm like, dude, there's a minute 43 left. What if they hit this? Anyhow, no, it's not Milton. Dives, your pick
from last night.
Yep.
No, what? I got nothing. Like,
you're not gonna believe it.
Who?
Danuel House.
See, that's all right. So that's
when plus minus shows its flaws. Because
exactly that's Exhibit A, and I will freely admit this, like how you can use data to form your own narrative, because that's not how it felt.
That's always so cool when you catch someone that didn't watch the game, because they'll be like, "Ah, dude, get House out of there. He's a -11." It's like, you didn't watch the game, sir. But let's get to the man of the night. And Joel Embiid, 33 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 of 7 from 3, 4 blocks. One of them was very, I guess I'll even call this growth from him, because he made a bad play on the offensive end and gets up and hustles his butt down the other end of the court and makes an outstanding block, which totally deflated any momentum the Celtics were beginning to build. Joel Embiid, baby. Tiago, how were you not stunned by that? But does that show growth? Like, he is growing before our eyes to the next level. Normally, he would have sulked about his turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. I think growth is the word, because playoff basketball, man, you got to move on to the next play. You just have to move on to the next play, especially a guy like Joel Embiid, who's going to be demanded of so much. I mean, the Sixers demand of him on offense, and they definitely rely on him on defense. So for a guy like that to sit back and sulk hurts you on both ends of the court. I thought last night, I even tweeted in the start of the second half, I was like, this is Joel Embiid's moment, perhaps his best moment, to grow his legacy and like bury Boston. I thought that second half, you could tell Boston was on the ropes, and it was on Joel Embiid to come out and punch him and knock him out. And I thought Joel Embiid, particularly defensively, was a monster, was an absolute monster. I mean, we already touched on the fact that he's had a monumental impact on this series itself. And I went back and I looked at the numbers. So I'm just going to pull up from my phone because I did some digging over this morning. So since Joel Embiid's return, Boston is shooting 36% from the paint, which is worst among all playoff teams.
Wow.
And they're averaging 17 attempts at the rim per game. So they had 28 attempts in game 1 when Paul Reed was at center. Since Joel has come back, it's 17 attempts. They're averaging 6 less attempts at the rim per game than they do during the regular season since game 2. So it's a monumental impact. It's literally why the Sixers have flipped the series upside down. You can tell. I mean, we talked about it. You can tell when you watch the tape. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they come down. They look at who's in the paint. They're like, nope, he's going to pull up from right here. And it's why Boston struggled last night, man. I thought that his presence defensively set the tone for the Sixers. If the Sixers get a similar Joel Embiid performance in Game 6, they're going to beat Boston. There is no doubt in my mind. So let's hope it plays out. But yeah, I mean, MVP level, Defensive Player of the Year type performance last night.
That's amazing. 6 attempts per game. That's obviously less points, but that's less fouls as well. Because when you're in the paint, you tend to get more fouls called, more contact. That's huge. Dibes, Joel Embiid growing before our eyes. The MVP, was that his vintage stamp game so far of his career?
Best play of his career was that block on Jaylen Brown. I was really hyped during post game last night, comparing it to LeBron's block, chase down block. I was ready to run.
I thought of it. It made me think of it. I thought of Jordan too. Jordan had one of them too in the past.
That was his moment. And like Tiago said, like biggest moment of his career, and he did it on the defensive end. Like, if you want to know why he's the MVP, it was Game 5. It was a masterclass defensive performance, and Tiago crushed it. I don't really have much to add. Like, the amount of shots he alters in the paint at the rim for the Celtics is ridiculous. Like, the amount of real estate he has in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's head is absurd. They're afraid. They literally are afraid. Once they drive and penetrate, they see Joel Embiid's presence and kick it out. That is the definition of a true MVP, and that's the presence, the impact of Joel Embiid. 20% of the Celtics shots came at the rim in Game 5, and like Tiago said, they got destroyed in Game 1 in that area. But Tiago had way better stats than me. But the play of the game was the chase down block on Jaylen Brown. I'll remember that for a long time. I've already watched it like 5 times, and I just can't stop smiling.
What a win. And before we wrap up, I didn't put this on the rundown, but we have like 2-3 minutes here, and I have to trash him because I hate him. And I just want to give a shout out to the what did he call himself? The vintage sharpshooter. And after game 4, when they lost, he said how confident and encouraged he was. 25 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 7, 0 for 7 from 3, just 5 rebounds. Mr. Sharpshooter himself. They used to call him Average Al. Do you remember that, Average Al? Back in the best. So you're just good on Boston. Like, relax, buddy. I think his smugness on top of the entire fan base and the Celtics thinking that loss on game 4, they thought that was not a win. And I think that smugness and that Boston makes me so mad was a huge impact. So there you go, Horford. I hope you and your sister enjoyed that one. And I cannot wait. Quickly, let's go predict. Well, we'll wait till tomorrow. We'll do predictions. I'm sure you'll have some stuff going. But for Tiago and Chris Dives, I am Freddie Burns. Before you go, let's check out this amazing lineup one more time. Check it out here. I'll just touch on after this show. Stay tuned. Right now, coming up at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock is Philly Press Box Radio, followed by 8:30 p.m. Edge of Philly Sports, and the Phillies have just tied the game 1-1 in the 9th, so we'll have Fighting's final post game as well. Dives, where can everyone find you?
Find me at Mr. Crockpot. And by the way, Philly Press Box Radio has Ray Didinger coming up on their show, breaking down Eagles. And real quick story, I went to Collegeville to get his signature. He was doing a book signing and reading and stuff at that. What's the popular bookstore? Oh
Barnes
my God,
and Nobles.
Barnes and Nobles. And we ran late. I was like an hour late, and my wife and I came in, and we're like, "Can you?" I brought his book for my dad because my dad is a huge Ray Didinger fan, and I ran up, and he was still there, and I went up. Do you mind signing this? And not only did he sign it, he stayed and wrote probably about 100 words in the book to my dad for his birthday. So amazing guest coming up. Find me at Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. I've already covered 5 positions in the 2024 NFL Draft. Defensive tackle and edge rusher are coming this week. So lots and lots more coming with the NFL Draft.
Tiago, where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me at Tiago PHL on Twitter. I do a lot of Sixers content on there. I also do some NBA stuff on there. So especially after the game, if you're looking to understand some numbers between the numbers, that's usually where you find some Sixers related stuff. Did some Joel Embiid deep dive. I think the Sixers, man, I'll give my prediction right now. I think the Sixers are going to wrap this up tomorrow. So I think
my God, again,
an exciting next couple of weeks, and we're not going to get any sleep when they're playing the Lakers at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night for the NBA Finals. So.
I popped 2 melatonin after the game just because I had to.
Yeah.
Quentin Moore, thanks for listening. Just delaying the inevitable. Let's not be too confident. Hold on, let me pull my thing up. All right, and then you can find me at Freddie Burns _ on Twitter. And as you can see, I've been saying it all series. I was in Disney World last week, yelling it at the Celtics fans that came up to me. We will see you next week at 6:15. Sixers in 6, baby.